Leo, you and I have been in the sport for a pretty long time. I won't give any exact numbers,
That's good.
but I wondered if you could let the followers of SportsEd TV fill them in on your background as a weightlifter, as a coach, and as an educator.
How long is this going to be? Because I could go on and on and on
Uh,
when you've been doing it for so many years.
the,
Um,
the questions should be short. The answers can be long.
okay, there you go. The First of all, the my career as a weightlifter, I really started. I bought my first set of weights when I was 12 from York Barbell of all places. It's about an hour from my house. So I bought my first set of weights from there, and I saw the weightlifters at the time training, and I was just intrigued. It was Bednarski and Tim Garcia and Tony Garcia and Rick Holbrook, all those guys. And I was just, I was this puny little 12-year-old watching these guys lift and go, man, that would be really cool. And so I pretty much taught myself, and not just watching them, and also through Strength and Health magazine. If
Right?
a lot of the old timers over there out there remember that magazine, and I just basically learned the lifts from those magazines. Tommy Kono's ABCs of Weightlifting, the Iron Grapevine, the Lifter's Corner, all those things that really got me, piqued my interest in weightlifting. And so I just kind of did that all by myself. I mean, I coached myself. I didn't have a coach, and just kind of learned because I was fascinated with it. And what I found was that going through high school, it really put some muscle on, and it made me a better athlete. So I competed in soccer and wrestling, and even gymnastics in high school. And so it's just made me a better athlete. So, but my true love was just the sport of weightlifting itself, and got really involved in that, and competed for, I think it was 17 years total, ending with the Olympic trials in 1984. But all along I'd been teaching. You mentioned about educator part of it. Well, that started, my career, as soon as I got out of college. It was I was a health and physical education major, so education was a huge part of my career right off the start. Even before I was coaching weightlifting, I was coaching a lot of other things. Wrestling was my big thing that I spent a lot of time coaching, had a lot of success with that, and then at the high school level. And anybody familiar with the high school setting, that a lot of times coaches are asked to coach multiple sports, even if they don't have a background in that sport.
Right.
Well, I ended up coaching a lot of different things. I mean, I coached soccer and gymnastics and swimming and diving and tennis, you name it. I coached a little bit of everything, ending my career coaching women's volleyball of all things. And actually, I'm not a volleyball guy, but I mean, I am now, but at the time I wasn't. And the same process I used for the weightlifting. I just started reading everything I could on volleyball, studying, going to clinics, and my last year of coaching, we ended up winning states. So
Great.
the bottom line is that it taught me that, weightlifting, if I'm going to get into weightlifting coaching, it's more than just coaching weightlifting, it's coaching athletes. And that's really been a big part of my career, is coaching weightlifters, but also coaching athletes in a lot of different sports, and been very successful with that. So pretty well-rounded background, actually, and I do a little bit of everything. So to me, the education part is huge, but the competition part is as well. So I really try to hit it from all different angles, because I just just have a passion for the teaching and coaching. And I always say that if you're a good coach, you got to be a good teacher. So the two really go hand in hand.
Well, I think it's very well stated, and it's also one of the things that many of us have spoken of, is these are unique times. Not only the last couple of months, I'll get to that in a few minutes, but there's a possibility now of being a weightlifting coach, and in our day, everybody who considered themselves a coach was simply a volunteer.
Exactly.
They worked somewhere else during the day, and they showed up at the weight room after work and put in time and never got paid.
Exactly.
Those times have changed.
Yeah, and that's a good thing, and it's a bad thing, because now with the internet, and I don't know if our discussion is going to get into this, but now with the internet and all the online coaching going on, there's a lot of experts out there, and I say experts with quotes
Quote
around
marks,
because
right.
there's a lot who really are, but then there's a lot who are pretend experts, but they market themselves really well. So I think we just have to be careful that, the ones who are really dedicated and passionate about doing it the right way and doing things that actually work, and I know, Harvey, you and I are probably always accused of being old school.
Right.
But you know what? We grew up with old school, and old school works. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Well, it certainly does, and it's interesting you bring up the topic of online coaching. I just was editing today a piece from Bob Tucano. His gym has been closed down out in Los Angeles, and he and I have talked in years past. I know he's not a fan of online coaching, and it has its challenges for weightlifting. There are some sports where it works well, but that's another topic, another day. But as you say, we're looking at a worldwide audience at SportsEdTV. We have people from all over the planet plugging in, looking at weightlifting, wanting to know more. They're providing questions. And so some of them probably are in similar situations to you and me in terms of start off training by yourself and hope you can figure it out. We're trying to be a resource where we can provide as much information as possible.
Exactly.
But it's, weightlifting is not a sport where everybody can get a lot of information very quickly, or I should say a lot of accurate information very quickly.
Well, that's the thing, and that's why I really appreciate what you have done for years, and I've been doing for a while now. And SportsEdTV has really picked up this slack on this to make sure that the education that's out there is sound, fundamental education that actually works and has been proven over time and has been proven by the research. It's not just the latest fad that's out there. It's the knowledge that actually works. And that's why you mentioned Bob Tucano. And, if I were to be a new lifter or a new coach just starting out wanting information, I guarantee Bob Tucano would be one that I would check and see what he's doing online because, he's got the vast experience of producing lifters as well as athletes in other sports. So, I always tell people, I say, look, pick and choose who you decide to listen to and take everything with a grain of salt because not everybody can be an expert. And I always say, I've been doing this for a lot of years. To be honest, I don't even consider myself an expert just because I realize there's so much information out there that, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. And a lot of people, they don't know what they don't know. So any bit of information that comes out there, they'll grab onto it and say, okay, I'm going to do this. Well, you want to back up what that information is all about first and then decide whether you want to apply it.
Yeah, and it's again, not to reflect too much on the past, but in our day, you'd wait anxiously by the mailbox to get your copy of Strength and Health, and we often changed our routines every month based on whatever the latest champion had to say.
Been there, done that.
At least they gave you the opportunity to train in a particular way for at least a month. Now you have people who are throwing things up on the internet instantaneously, and I think it's very challenging to figure out how to spread solid training advice. And I wanted to ask you, with Totten Training Systems, tell us about that operation, how it works, what your aims have been. I know you at one point were highlighting strength and conditioning coaches, and that may still be the case. But if someone were to look you up online, what do they find out about Totten Training Systems?
Well, what I try to do is I try to put together all of the knowledge that I've accrued over the years and the experience that I've accrued, and basically just get as much information out there as possible. I do a weekly article on technique, and matter of fact, I want to thank SportsEdTV for providing some of the photo sequences I've been using in my articles, and just trying to reiterate to people what's the best way to train. I mean, whether you're training to be a weightlifter or you're training in some other sport where weightlifting type training will help you. And obviously, you know, we're both into weightlifting. Notice I use the word weightlifting instead of Olympic lifting because I know that's a thing you point out all the time. But you know, but every time I do a course, I have to explain that to people. I said, okay, for this course, we're going to call it weightlifting because that's what it is. In this country, our people, we don't understand what weightlifting is, because when you say you're a weightlifting coach, the first thing they say is, well, how much can you bench? Well, we do some benches, but obviously that's not what we do. So I have to explain that's why we call it Olympic lifting. So but around the world, they know what weightlifting is. So, you know, just trying to get that out. But also the thing I try to do, besides just the weightlifting information and the using weightlifting in strength and conditioning, I try to have a good bit in there on training athletes, training people, relationships with people, how you treat people, how you show respect, how you get them to buy into what you're doing, and, you know, really relating to the athletes, because, you know, whether you're doing a weightlifting program for someone where you actually tell them sets and reps and weights to use, I think that needs to be as individualized as possible, because there's so many different situations out there. Well, it's the same thing with how you handle athletes. I mean, I don't think there's any one way that you treat males as opposed to females, or any way you treat, you know, certain types of males or certain types of females certain ways. I think you try to understand the psychology behind how everyone works, and you won't have all the answers, but, you know, to get to know them, to get to how you get to have that relationship with them. That's something I really try to stress in my courses that I do, and in the blogs and all that I do, and even in my the courses when I'm teaching them, I'm trying to teach them more not just to learn the technique of the lifts, but how to really understand the movements and to apply that way you can apply the physics and the strategies in weightlifting. You can apply that to whatever sport you're dealing with. So I try to hit it from all different angles. That's just, I guess that's the educator in my background. But I think people need to know that, because, you know, you can know all the X's and O's that you need, but if you can't really apply that, or if you're not getting the point across, then you're not really as good a coach as you need to be.
Very well stated. Do you notice a difference in trying to teach the lifts to strength and conditioning coaches versus weightlifting coaches, or those who wish to be weightlifting coaches?
Well, yeah, but even that's individualized, because there's some strength coaches who have more Olympic lift background than others, and weightlifting background, and then there's others that have zero, and there are some who have weightlifting background that, I don't want to say that they've been taught wrong, but their technique isn't really conducive to why are you doing what you're doing. Okay, I mean, you see on the internet, a lot of times you might have some kid in the high school, he's doing a 300-pound clean, and all of his teammates around him, and they're cheering, and it's just a big deal, and he makes the clean, but it's the ugliest thing you've ever seen.
Sure. And
you know, to me, the strength coach needs to keep that under control. I mean, there's obviously the motivation factor, you know, you get that, but are they really doing the exercises to get the benefit out of it? Okay, I mean, I've seen some what I call glorified reverse curls. Well, when they're doing a clean, but are they really getting the value out of it? So the thing we have to stress is that technique has to be effective, so that it's doing what it's supposed to do, and it has to be safe. And I think some strength coaches need more work on that than others. Some strength coaches don't buy into weightlifting because they say it takes too much time, or whatever the reasons are. And you know what? I tell them, I said, you know, I'll give them all the reasons, the values of what we do and how we do it, how we break it down, and try to make it as clear as possible. But I tell them, I said, look, the bottom line is, if you're not really willing to buy into this, your athletes certainly aren't going to buy into it. Then don't do it. And that breaks my heart to say that. But at the same time, I would rather have them not do it at all than to do it, in a half-assed way.
Or something that would cause injury. Yeah.
Exactly. That's huge. So the two things we really look for is the technique that you're teaching and the strategies that you're using. Is that going to enhance performance, and is it going to be done in a safe enough way for injury prevention?
Mm-hmm. Oh, well stated. It's interesting. I was looking at some questions we've been receiving, and people want to know about a power clean, power snatch, whatever, and explaining that in very few words to answer is a challenge. But I noticed when I've Googled power clean, there are an awful lot of squat cleans that come up, and I think the weightlifting terminology can be very confusing. You probably saw the recent blog we did on the so-called triple extension.
Yep, I saw that. That was good blog. Very nice.
Terminology is an odd part of our sport. It is with all sports, but it certainly is something where I think a coach has to one, have a knowledge and understanding, and then two, be able to explain that to everybody else. Otherwise, we're all on the wrong page.
Exactly.
Another important component of your where you put your energy is East Coast gold. As I understand, you're still a key player at U.S. weightlifting competitions.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah. What's the history behind ECG and how that has grown over the years?
Well, it's interesting that you brought up Totten training and East Coast Gold as well, because I do wear two major hats. I mean, Totten training is the business that I've put together after I retired from teaching, and then East Coast Gold, that really started back in 1992. So we've been around for a good many years now. What happened was I found that there were lifters out there that had approached me about helping them, and they were kind of out on their own. They were in the same boat I was when I first started lifting. They're lifting by themselves. They have an interest in it, and they really want to keep going with it. But as we all know, training by yourself is tough. So I had like 2 or 3 different athletes that I was doing programming for them, and they were doing pretty well and from afar. And then one of them qualified for nationals. Well, he and I both, neither of us had any money to go at the time. So I said, well, how about if I start a team, and then that way we can look for sponsors and we can do things, at least get together as a team, even if it's from afar with phone calls and newsletters and stuff like that. So we started with like 3 or 4 people on the team. Next thing you know, we're up to 300. I mean, it just blossomed. And what I found too is that there are a lot more people out there on their own than I realized. I mean, obviously, it's an ideal situation to be in one central area where you have like the Wesley weightlifters or Jim Schmitz at the Sports Palace, or wherever. It's always ideal to have a situation like that, because that whole team concept, everybody's right there. Everybody's got a coach looking at them right there. So that's ideal. But what I found, there was a lot of people out there that didn't have that situation. So it kind of, East Coast Gold, it kind of evolved into what I call a satellite center system, where what we try to do is I try to, in different areas around where there was an interest, kind of like pockets of interest, I try to develop athletes at that area as well as coaches in that area. It's one of the reasons why I do so many of the USAW courses, to train coaches in that particular area, and then we promote each of those areas to try to get more coaches, more athletes, more equipment for them, better facilities, and that kind of blossomed into, I think we ended up with like 20 satellite centers at one point, and I think we have about 12 really active ones right now. And through that, it kind of pulled everybody together as one team, and we all had the same philosophy on things, the strategy when we get to meets, We work together. We always provide somebody, whatever lifter it is, make sure they have a coach and a meet. When we went to the last nationals that we won, men and women, we had 33 lifters at nationals.
Wow.
And me as head coach, yeah, it was huge. I mean, from a logistical point of view, absolutely. Well, it's nice because me being head coach, I don't have to coach all 33 of them. Anytime we go to nationals, we'll bring along 6, 7, 8 different, what I call assistant coaches, but they're the head coach in their own area. And I myself don't take credit for their lifters, but they represent East Coast Gold, coached by their individual coaches. And the system just seems to work. So we've won, like, I think it's 20 national team titles now in the past 10 years or so. So, I mean, it's working very well. And one of the nice things now is that, I've been doing this for years. And one of the things I always wanted to do was to have a central location. Right now, Phil Sabatini and his crew at Virginia Beach, they're our main satellite center right now. So that's actually the address of the team. The address of the team used to be 654 Georgetown Road, Littlestown, Pennsylvania.
I know that one.
Yeah, absolutely. So we ended up, just kind of shifting everything over there. So I'm the head coach and CEO of East Coast Gold still, but I'm trying to delegate a lot of these duties to these younger coaches and, having them take some of the responsibility. And they've been doing an awesome job, really, really good. So Phil is the president and the associate head coach. So, he's basically in charge with me, doing all the things I can still do, but I'm trying to, let good people do the good stuff that we've started to keep that going.
Well, you got very good help there, and you've had
Absolutely.
good help over the years.
Absolutely, and I just give those guys so much credit, but that's really kind of revolves back to what you're talking about getting some type of a system, like my Totten training systems. I have a particular way I do things. Well, when I started East Coast Gold, I had a particular system, and I wanted to develop that family culture. Again, it's all about relationships as well. So that kind of, the two, Totten Training and East Coast Gold, kind of have the same philosophies and the same cultures on how we run things. And it seems to work.
Yeah, it's interesting. I probably about the same time I remember, although I was living in Colorado at the time, Team Florida started their super team, I'll call it, concept. And I remember talking to some of the main players, and I said, "You're going to kill the competition, the club competition or team competition within the state, because everybody was then lifting for Team Florida." And they finally broke it up a little bit, and now they have Team Florida this county, Team Florida that city, whatever the case may be. So they don't all come together to score the same team points in a competition. At least I don't think they do.
Well, they've gotten back to, I think, the Florida Elite, where they've gotten back to that. So I think they have.
Yeah, that's and who knows with the rules these days as to what you can and can't do. But it's I always say the sport is not a team sport, but there certainly are some advantages to having a training environment or a culture that brings people together.
Well, and that's what we've done, and I think the bottom line is, even from the day I started the team, this is all about the individual. It's not about the team. Believe it or not, that's not why we do what we do. The team was put together to make each individual better. And the team things just came along. I mean, the team accolades and the trophies and everything, that came along as a result of doing what was best for the athlete. And the interesting part is that I've had people that have been part of the team, and then they maybe train someplace else or move or whatever, and they decide to join the team of their new location. And I'm absolutely fine with that. I know some people think that, I don't know why they do this. They think I grab up all the lifters that I can and try to build this super team. I don't do that at all. They come to me, and I'm actually kind of reticent about allowing people on unless the situation is right, communication with the other coach, things. There's all kinds of things. I just want to make sure we do it the right way. But the interesting thing is, on many occasions, they would somebody who might leave the team for whatever reason, they end up coming back, which I think is kind of interesting. And again, I tell people, I say, look, if this is a better situation for you as an individual to leave East Coast Gold to go to another team, I'm absolutely fine with that. I'll sign the transfer form without the 4-month waiting period. I'll do that if that's what's best for you. Absolutely. I said the only thing I ask is that we still be friends.
Yeah.
And seems to work out.
Well, it sounds like it works very well. Congratulations on your performances.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, I wanted to ask, the current headlines of the pandemic conditions that we have throughout the country and the world. I want to incorporate some of what you've said with perhaps what we have staring at us here over the next few months. There seem to be a lot of cancellations. As of yesterday or today, we see the Olympics are postponed for a year. I'm not sure what's going on with local meets in certain parts of the country, but even having someone like Bob Tucano tell me his gym has had to close in California. What sort of an impact have you experienced, or do you anticipate experiencing, and how's this being handled? I guess that also applies, Leo, to the seminars and workshops that you do.
Yeah, I mean, everything's put on hold. I mean, it's a sad, tough situation, but it's one that we all have to deal with. So I've already had to postpone 2 level 1s for USA Weightlifting and 1 level 2. But postponed, not canceled. So we just, I give USAW credit. JP Nicoletta is the guy in charge of arranging schedules. He's got to be pulling his hair out. He's been doing an awesome job with this. So basically what we're doing is just moving things back 2-3 months and waiting it out and see if, those dates even work. But the problem is you end up with a logjam of, everybody needing to reschedule in a shorter period of time. So,
Leo,
yeah.
I saw something on US Weightlifting's site the other day about online L1 courses. Is that implemented? Is it practical?
I see that they're doing that, and I understand the rationale behind it, but I have to learn more about it before I'm really convinced.
Okay.
I mean, I understand the thought process behind it, but the big part to me, because I've taught, as you know, I mean, I've been teaching these courses since I was really part of the whole crew that got them together back in the mid '80s when we first started the club coach course, and everything's kind of evolved from that. But so I take a good bit of pride in these things, and the big takeaway that I think the people taking these courses need is that practical, hands-on part of it. There's a lot of things you can do online, but how do you really replace the practical, hands-on part? So I'm not sure how USAW is doing it, and I'm sure they're doing a great job with it. I just haven't really had a chance to examine how they're doing the practical part.
Yeah, you've not had the experience. It's going to be interesting to watch. I saw enough or read enough that stated that it might be helpful to have a dowel or a barbell nearby while
might
you're
be helpful. I would think so. Oh. That's the thing. I'm just not sure.
Right, but you're seeing cancellations rather than or I should say postponements rather than people are still interested. They just have to be able to find a time when they can all come together.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think people just need to be patient. I mean, everybody's on hold right now. So
sure.
To get that online now, everybody's on hold. So you might as well wait until everybody's not on hold, if you know what I mean.
I would agree. What are you seeing any local competitions canceled?
Yeah, everything's moved back.
Sanctions are they've been approved or they're on the calendar, but people are now just coming up with alternative dates,
Correct.
hopefully.
Yes, I think that's how most of them are going. I know I was supposed to run our big East Coast Classic April 4 or 5 in
Right.
Philadelphia, or co-run it, I should say. And we moved that back till July 18th, I think it is. So we're giving it plenty of time there. So I think that's what most people are doing. And you just got to be smart about that sort of thing. Although I think it's interesting, and I do like this concept. I'm not sure how it's going to work out, but USAW is trying to really do an outstanding job of accommodating everybody's needs. So
Right.
one of the reasons why we had our meet April 4 or 5 was the last chance qualifier for nationals.
Sure.
So as of now, nationals are still on. Okay, that might change. I don't know. But
Yeah.
so what USAW has done, they've done an online, like a virtual competition where you can literally video yourself getting weighed in, send in your lifts, your 3 snatches, your 3 clean and jerks. National level referees from USA Weightlifting will observe the lifts, count them good or bad or whatever, and use those totals to qualify. So I'm hoping that works out. That sounds like a great idea. If everybody follows along with the guidelines that they put up and it works, I hope it does.
Well, and it may actually lead to something in the future. I know Bridget Rock out in Washington State has proposed this over the past couple of years, and she did quite a bit of groundbreaking work to look at, can we put together online competitions? Part of I don't think you could do it with a large audience or large participant list, but you certainly could do it club to club. You do have to have referees sitting somewhere in front of a computer watching the lifts.
Right.
But it's almost it's an update. It's a 21st century version of what we used to see with the teenage nationals or the so-called junior nationals at the time, where you did a meet in a certain part of the country, and then hopefully on the same day, and you had to send in the results to find out who was actually the national champion.
Right. There has been in the past some competitions like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we may be on the brink of seeing something different. I see that the CSCCA still plans to meet in May, or at least the last word I got. And you normally go to that event, do you not?
Correct. Yes, because I go representing Totten Training as well as Amplify Sports and Wellness. And I actually get to hang out with the Dartfish guys and Victor Bergonzoli. We get to hang out a little bit. So it's great communicating with the other coaches, and I'm hoping it's still a go.
Well, I hope so as well.
As of right now, it is.
It's in Orlando, and if we get a green light, I'll plan on being over there and look forward to seeing you there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You've been on Olympic teams. You were a manager, what, in 08, was it, or?
In 96 and 04.
Okay. The years slip by.
They fly by. They fly by, don't they?
What, as one who prepares athletes for the Olympics and one who's been, as have I, part of an Olympic team, what's your knee-jerk reaction to the postponement of at least a year for the games and what it does to an athlete?
Well, it has different reactions to different athletes depending on where they are in their career. But I think, and it's kind of cool because I read a lot in the past day or two from different athletes, and they all are saying the same thing, that this is the best decision to make because mostly because of the preparation. Okay, so what do you do if you have the competition coming up? How do you do your trials? How do you do your preparation when you're not allowed in your swimming pool or your weight room or whatever? So, as tough as it is on the athletes, they all seem to agree that, hey, if we can't train, let's keep it an even playing field. There might be others in other countries and other situations where they're ignoring the coronavirus thing and going ahead with training in spite of it, but yet we're not allowed. It just needs to be a level playing field.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think they all agree that this is the best way to do it. I feel bad for the ones that they're like, this is like their last hurrah, because their career is coming to an end, and now
Yeah. Yeah.
got to put it off for a year, especially with the sports that, your age makes a difference. I mean, think of somebody like Simone Biles. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
she's old for a gymnast as it is, and she's still kicking butt. I mean, she is unbelievable. Can she continue that for another year? I mean, the way it's looking, yeah, probably, but that makes it tough on all the athletes for sure. But I still think that is the best decision.
Yeah. No, it seemed only practical. I had been telling people I certainly thought it was going to go in that direction. Yeah. Your points are well made, and it's going to be very interesting to see. There were no trials for weightlifting this year. Is that correct?
Correct.
It
Yeah.
was going to be all just ranking at international meets and the Roby points and all of this.
Yes, it's a very complicated system, but yeah, that's what would have determined. I just remember the Olympic trials were a big deal as a
Sure.
separate meet by themselves, and it was
Absolutely.
cool to say. I mean, heck, back in my day when I was lifting, I can say I competed in 2 Olympic trials.
Right.
Didn't quite
Right.
make an Olympic team as a lifter, but I can say I lifted in 2 Olympic trials. Now, athletes can't say that anymore. So it's a shame that that's taken away, but you got to change with the times, and with the Roby points and the whole qualifying system, that changed the whole thing around about the trials, which is sad.
Mhm.
I think it's kind of sad.
Well, I do too, and I think the USOC probably, the U.S. Olympic Committee probably feels similarly. I mean, it used to be TV revenue. It
Yeah.
used to be uh, host sites would pay to stage the trials. I was very surprised a couple months back when I started looking at to see where the trials were going to be, and then discovered they were not.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's the International Federation, and maybe I guess there are lots of changes going there as well. Speaking of international, I again wanted to emphasize that SportsEdTV has quite a broad international following. It is seldom, at least as it relates to weightlifting, it's seldom that the U.S. ranks first. We have a number of folks, especially in India, who are tuning into what's going on.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's been fascinating to watch. We get a lot of questions, and I don't know necessarily from whence they came, but folks who are unfamiliar with the sport, they like what they see, and they're asking basic questions of how do you best learn the sport? How long does it take? Uh, some people obviously want to know, they're asking more bodybuilding questions like, gee, will I get big muscles? Uh, things that were
Will I
sort
get
of,
will I get muscle bound? That's
well,
another.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's another good one. Yeah. What's your advice to someone who wants to learn how to snatch and clean and jerk? And I guess, Leo, I'd ask that you address that from both the U.S. perspective, and then also perhaps imagine someone in perhaps an undeveloped part of the world who has access to the computer and SportsEdTV, and they want to know more about what steps to take.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think they're on the right track. Just the fact that they're looking at SportsEdTV, because that's a great resource for to answer their questions and to find out how you get started, how you continue. I would like to think Totten Training Systems is a good resource as well.
Right.
TottenTraining.com. One of the things that you guys at SportsEdTV and myself. I think we're 2 really good resources, but if we're not the resource that works for them, we can certainly point them, with all the experience that we've had and background we've had, we can point them in the right direction if what we offer isn't what they're looking for. So, that's one of the things that I always emphasize to, anytime I do a clinic or a seminar or whatever, I say, look, there's a lot of great information out there, but you just got to know where to look. Whether it's, different books that you want to recommend as a resource, or different websites or whatever. I think that's the big thing. People just need to know where that stuff is, because everybody has different interests. Like you say,
Yeah.
some of them have more bodybuilding interests. So obviously that's not what you and I do with our two sources, but we can direct them maybe to some place that would be more for what they're asking for. Or if they're asking for, can you come to my school and do a clinic, then that's maybe something I can help with. So it just depends on their situation. And I personally do just most of my stuff nationally, and I would love to get more involved internationally as well, if that would be appropriate.
Right. Well, you pointed out in your introductory comments two key points from our era, since we came up at about the same time. One was the presence of Strength and Health magazine, and of course now no one can. Well, I don't even know if a newsstand still exists, but
Exactly.
You can't go out and find a magazine or subscribe to a magazine that's going to give you much information on weightlifting. The other thing is, you mentioned starting at age 12, as did I for the most part with general training. If we had a 12-year-old overseas now plugged into looking at what's available, what would the keys be that you would instruct a 12-year-old to focus on in order to establish a good foundation to then become better later? I mean, we know we're not going to see generally a 12-year-old at the Olympics in weightlifting. It takes a certain number of years to mature and gain certainly the physical strength. But what would a 12-year-old do if you were training them today? What sort of emphasis would you place on their training?
Well, obviously there's a lot of factors involved, a lot of things you'd have to find out about that 12-year-old. But I think you used the word exactly that I would, and that is create the foundation. What kind of foundation do they have? And, you make your best decisions from there. As an example of that, I had a dad one time that asked me, he said, my 12-year-old son is you said 12 years old. He said, my 12-year-old son is a really good baseball pitcher, and he's going to get a scholarship and everything. How many times have we heard that, right? He said, well, he's a really good baseball pitcher. You're a really good weightlifting coach. Can you write him up a program to, take him to that next level? And I think he thought I was just going to go to the filing cabinet and pull out a workout and hand it to him. Right. But instead, I just started asking him questions. I said, is he right-handed? Is he left-handed? Is he a mature 12-year-old? Does he have the body of a 10-year-old? Does he play any other sports? Does he play baseball year-round? I just answered all those questions. I made the mistake, though, of waiting to the last question, and I should have used this as the first question. And I said, does he really want to do this? And the dad goes, yeah. And I'm thinking, oh, shoot, there's no way he even asked the kid. So I said, okay, I'll do this. So I spent 2 hours making up a 6-month plan and, schedule it around all these different things, information I got from him. He did one, and the kid did one workout, figured it was too hard, found something else online, and never followed my program again. Yep. So, all those factors I think are important. But getting back to your question, build a foundation first. Make him an athlete first.
Good point.
Because I taught high school for a bunch of years, and it was really frustrating for me to have 9th and 10th graders when I said, okay, we're going to warm up for our weightlifting session here now. We're going to do a little dynamic warm up. Let's just do a power skip down the gym. And to see 9th and 10th graders, to have a handful of them that couldn't even do a skip, I'm thinking, oh, shoot, are you serious? Those things should be taught in 1st and 2nd grade. How to skip, how to gallop, how to slide, karaoke, all those just basic locomotor movements, strength movements. Do 10 good push-ups, do 5 good pull-ups. Just kids can't do that. So that's the first thing. Do the body weight stuff, become a good athlete first. Then we're talking, and use some of the strength stuff, real basic stuff, deadlifts and squats and presses and bench presses before you really get into the dynamic stuff. I think you can teach them with light weights, how to snatch and how to clean and jerk. But as far as putting weight on the bar, it's build a foundation and build up from there. And if you're not a good athlete, you're not going to be a good weightlifter.
That's very true. That's very true. And I also think if the emphasis is on too much weight too soon, the technical skills are never going to be gained, and It's going to be very frustrating for someone who thinks they should be lifting greater weights and can't do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I know you and I are on the same page for that one.
Yeah. You can't learn technique with too heavy weights. It's as simple as that.
Nope. As we get ready to wrap up here, what other ideas, plans, comments would you like to make? It's it's your time. We want to feature Leo Totten.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate that because I'm not very good at marketing myself. I actually have a person who does that for me, just because I'm not really good about talking about myself. I've never been. Now, if somebody else wants to talk about me, I guess that's fine. But that's the thing. That's why some of the so-called experts out there are they get a lot of likes and hits on social media because they're really good at marketing themselves. So the marketing part of it, I'm trying to get better at. And one of the things that I think is that I really like to promote, not only myself, but I've been working closely in conjunction with Amplify Sports and Wellness.
I was going to ask. Yeah, I heard you mention that earlier. Could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. One of the things, like I said, education is a big deal to me. And one of the things that struck me when I started conversation with them, it's been about 3 years ago now. And one of the things that I was impressed was that they're like an online education platform where, we're trying to provide opportunities for more education with good, solid online training with good, solid, experienced coaches who've been there, whether it's the speed and agility with Lauren Landau or the weightlifting part that I'm doing or, whatever. We want to make sure that the good, proper education is out there. And all of our courses that we're putting online are good for CEUs because one of the things we like to talk about is, just involving as many strength and conditioning coaches as possible and giving them opportunities of getting CEUs in the comfort of their own home. So I'm pretty particular about how the online training goes because, as we discussed earlier, there's only certain things you can do without being practical, hands-on part of it. So really careful to make sure that the education is something that they can do, and it's pretty much the equivalent of doing it hands-on, but you don't have to spend the time or the money to travel somewhere. Just like we go to a lot of the CSCCA conferences and the NSCA conferences, and they're all really good, and people go there to get their CEUs by going to the conference, and they end up maybe listening to 2 or 3 different talks. Well, by the time you figure the expenses that are involved of travel to wherever it is and booking your hotels and your registration fees, your food and everything else, they could spend for like a 3-day conference, they could spend, $2,000-$3,000. Yep. Well, if they can pick and choose what courses they want rather than just listening to a 45-minute talk by 3 different people, this way, they get a lot more bang for the buck. And again, I don't buy into new things that quickly because I know there's a lot of the new things that are out there that really haven't proven by the test of time. And I really like what this company is doing. So I've been working very closely with them, putting in some courses online for them as well. And we're in the process of getting that launched pretty soon. So that's going to keep me pretty busy. That's for sure. It's good quality education.
Good. I mean, I do know there's no moss growing on you. That you are, you do keep yourself busy. And
I am retired, but I think I'm about the busiest retired person out there.
Well, we certainly appreciate your time today, and look forward to further work with you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Harvey.
Hope the year goes well, and hope we can run into each other sometime soon.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me on the show here, and anything we can do together, you know, you and I think along the same lines, and we've done a lot of good things, and we both have a passion for what we're doing, and I think hopefully that shows. So we'd love to keep doing that.
Great, Leo. Take care.
All right. Thanks, Harvey. Appreciate it.